May we have the grace and the courage to keep your commandments. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. So here's the scene in the passage from Deuteronomy. Moses and the Israelite people are just on the threshold of crossing into the promised land. Now imagine, people have been chomping at the bit for a couple generations through the wilderness to get to this point. And Moses is giving a rather extended sermon. And you can imagine that people are just like, oh, come on, let's just get into the promised land, finally. But what Moses is doing here, Moses is giving them like a last will and testament. But instead of bequeathing to them money or property, he's giving them, he's offering them wisdom. Moses is saying, God chooses you. God has chosen you. Now you are to choose God fully, 100%, 110%. And here's what choosing God entails. Loving God, observing God's commandments and decrees and ordinances, walking with God, holding fast to God. And holding fast isn't just about, in the Hebrew translation, it's just not about holding on tight. It goes even deeper. It's about cherishing. It's about cherishing the relationship with God. It's about cherishing God's commandments and teachings. Hold fast. Or do something else. See, Moses is putting before the people the choice that God's been putting before us all throughout since the creation of the world. God is saying, choose me, choose relationship with me, choose fidelity with me, or choose to turn away from me. The choice forever for us is choosing to turn toward God or away from God. Moses is saying to the people, you know, we've had lots of practice with this these last 40 years. And now you're getting ready to go into the promised land. I'm not going to be going into there with you. I want you to take with you this wisdom to choose fidelity, to choose trust in God. And see, just not with your head, I'm going to choose to follow God, but also with your heart, and also with actions, daily actions, loving, observing, walking with, holding fast, cherishing God's teachings, cherishing the relationship with God. Now, this passage takes place at the end of the journey through the wilderness. Next week, newsflash from the liturgical calendar, next week, on Wednesday, begins Lent. And you've got Jesus at the beginning of his ministry going into the wilderness. And when Jesus is in the wilderness, he's got to choose how he is going to use his God-given gifts, his God-given mission. Is he going to use it for the kingdom of God? Or is he going to use it for ungodly purposes? You know, those temptations that Jesus has, those are all forms of choices that are presented to him. Hey, Jesus, how are you going to use your power? Hey, Jesus, if you're really the Son of God, prove it. Hey, Jesus, if, then this. And each time that Jesus is tempted, Jesus turns from the twist of the temptation to another scriptural passage which is about trusting God and serving God 110%. Because you see, Jesus has to choose really whose voice is he going to listen to. Just like the Israelites had to choose. Just like Moses had to choose. Just like Noah had to choose. Just like Abraham had to choose. Just like Adam and Eve had to choose. Our faith journey is about a daily choice to follow Jesus, to follow the commands that God has given us. Think about it this way. Think about the nature of any sacred commitment. Be they the baptismal vows, or marriage vows, or ordination vows. Yeah, we may make them publicly, declare them out loud once, except for our baptismal vows. Hopefully you've noticed we tend to reaffirm those from time to time here. But what you'll notice is that the nature of sacred vows is they require daily tending. They require a daily commitment. Did you catch in Deuteronomy 4 times the word today is mentioned? 4 times. Now you've heard me say that in Scripture, when you hear a phrase or a word repeated, if it turns up more than once, wow, that's like a neon sign flashing, right? And the way that word today flashes for me is a reminder that every day I have to choose to follow my baptismal vows. Anne and I talk about how essential it is that every day we're committing to loving one another and letting our love reveal the love of God. The ordination vows are like the baptismal vows, living into them every single day. And there are opportunities, if we are paying attention, there are opportunities all day long And he says twice, I have set before you. I have set before you this choice. In other words, he's also reminding them that every day this choice is going to be set before you. Choose God. Choose life. And choose it by doing the loving thing, the observant, faithful thing. Jesus will come and say something very similar. Jesus will say, hey, look, all these laws, all the ordinances and decrees in the Torah, they aren't just about nitpicky rules and regulations. They're about our relationship with God. You know, every aspect of life is identified in those rules and regulations in the Torah. From how you wash pots and pans, to which ones you use, to how you do business, to how you raise a family, to how you treat the stranger. Like 611 some odd rules. And a lot of folks who are not Jewish will look at that and be like, oh my God, you know? What's the point? All these little rules. What the point is to have God and the relationship with God right in front of us at all times. In every aspect of our lives, every single thing we do. What do you hold fast to? See, all those regulations, because they address what we do in everyday life, bring our awareness to our relationship with God. Bring our awareness to God. What do you hold fast to? Loving and serving God, or something else? Now people will say, but wait a second, if I'm supposed to prioritize my relationship with God, and I'm supposed to prioritize, God's commandments, well, what about my family? What about my intimate relationship? What about my work? What about my pledge to serve my country? Here's the key. Everything you and I do, we do with the intention of loving and serving God with everything we've got. So that every relationship is about deepening the relationship with the Holy One. Every relationship is about, how do I choose? How do you choose to love and serve God through the course, through the actions of your everyday life? And what's more, think about this. Think about holding fast. What do you hold fast to? Especially when life is challenging you so much. Especially when tragedy is happening. What do you hold fast to when you're losing your grip on life? What do you hold fast to? And see, Jesus, man, not just in the temptation narratives, but all throughout his ministry, and finally on the cross. What is Jesus doing on the cross? He's well, yeah, well, Jesus is God. Look, what he's showing us on that cross is, what do we hold fast to? What do we reach for deep inside us in those moments? And that's why spiritual disciplines, spiritual practices are so important. Because it's through practicing them on a daily basis that we're able to hold fast to them even in the worst moments. When it all comes down to, especially in the reading from Deuteronomy this morning, and the 4 mentions of today, that's about paying attention. What is it that we pay attention to? What turns our head? What turns our heart? What turns our stomach? You know, these are all colloquialisms. But what they get at is what grabs our attention? What holds our attention? What do we choose to pay attention to? God chooses eternally. Eternally, God chooses us. And in return, we have the choice to choose God or not. Remember, paying attention is the most basic form of love. And so to love God is to turn our attention as many times as it takes throughout the course of the day towards God. And that's what spiritual practice is about. That's what's choosing. That's what Moses and Jesus and all the great sages talk about. Choosing God. Choosing to pay attention to God through every aspect